You're listening to Casual to Raider.
Hello everyone, this is a special episode of Casual to Raider for the Convert to Raid Resto Shaman Bootcamp that Asimi hosted. Thank you everybody for coming to the Convert to Raid Shaman Bootcamp. My name is Asimi and I will be going over everything here tonight. Resto Shaman, I find it's a great class to heal. Been doing it since Mists of Pandaria began, when I re-rolled on this server. What's really nice is that there haven't really been too many changes between Mist and currently, as far as the spells and abilities that you use. It's just the priorities that you use them in is a little bit different. The stat priorities that you use have also changed, and I'll go over everything. So I guess the best thing to do is to start off with the different abilities that the Resto Shamans have. The first main ability that you want to use is Riptide. Riptide is an instant cast heal, and it also puts a hot onto whoever you're casting it on. But the most important thing is it gives you 2 stacks of tidal waves. And what the tidal waves do is it increases the haste of your next healing wave by 20%, or it increases the crit chance of healing surge by 30%, which is huge. So it can make your next healing surge a lot bigger, or it makes your smaller heals quicker. So you want to use Riptide, keep those tidal waves up at all time. It's really important. And then your bread and butter heal is going to be Healing Wave. It's the heal that you want to use for low to moderate damage. It's an efficient heal, nothing else too special about it. And then the next big one is Unleash Life. Unleash Life is going to increase the next direct heal that you cast by 30%. So what you want to do with that is you want to cast Unleash Life while you still have a stack of Riptide up, because then you're going to get the benefits of both, and it just makes it more efficient. And you want to use Unleash Life on cooldown. Then Healing Surge is your very quick, expensive, not the most efficient heal. So you want to use that in the moments where you're starting to fall behind on healing, or there is moderate to high damage going out. And then, of course, the ever-popular Chain Heal. Chain Heal is what you would want to cast when a lot of the people are taking damage at once, and they're spread out a bit. It's going to heal your main target for a set amount, and then it's going to jump to nearby targets. And it can heal a total of 4 targets. But every time it jumps, it reduces the heal by 10%. And then you have your Healing Rain, which is the heal that you want to go to when you have a phase where everyone is stacking up. Healing Rain used to be one of the main heals that you would use in your rotation, but it's not anywhere near as efficient as what it used to be. So it's more of a situational use now. And those are the main heals that you're going to be throwing out throughout the fight. Now, one of the buffs that you have is Earth Shield. And with Earth Shield, you're going to put this on the active tank. So to really get the good use out of it when there's tank swaps, you want to switch which target your Earth Shield is on. And when you have your Earth Shield on it, any healing spells that are cast on that target are increased by 20%. And when the tank takes damage, they'll also get healed as well. Now, it only puts 9 charges on, so it will fall off after 9 hits. So it's very important to keep that up at all times, just like Tidal Waves. It's one of those buffs that you just 100% uptime. And then there's, of course, the one thing that really sets Shamans apart from other classes is the totems. Now, your main totems that you're going to want to keep down at all times is going to be your Healing Stream Totem and Cloudburst Totem. Healing Stream Totem is a 30-second cooldown that will heal party members over the course of 15 seconds. Now, it's no longer as good of a smart heal as what it used to be, so it can heal someone who is either the most damage or someone who's missing 1 hit point. So it's not as effective, but it's free healing just for dropping a totem, so you want to use it on cooldown. Now, what's really nice is that Cloudburst Totem is also a 30-second cooldown, and it also lasts for 15 seconds. So as soon as one's up, you cast the next one. As soon as that one's gone, you cast the next one. And you just keep swapping back and forth. And then you have your big cooldown totems. Healing Tide Totem is your 3-minute cooldown, and it heals your party or raid for a very large amount over the course of 10 seconds. And then you also have your Spirit Link Totem, which is also going to last 6 seconds, and it redistributes everybody's health so that they're at the same percentage of maximum health. And it's for so many people who are in a small area, which is about the same as Healing Rain. Now, what's really kind of cool about Healing Rain, Spirit Link, and the Healing Tide Totem is if you throw it on Healing Rain, throw it on Healing Tide, and then throw it on Spirit Link Totem when everyone's stacked up, you can pretty much take any group who's just about to die and stabilize within that 6-second window and be sitting really well, because it is going to be a massive amount of healing in that 6 seconds. And then, of course, you have a self buff, which is your Water Shield, which is your passive mana regeneration. Now, what's really nice is that with the Water Shield, you're also going to have Resurgence. So every time you critical heal, you're going to get mana back, which makes crit a good stat to stack. But we'll get into that in just a little bit. And then some other cooldowns that we have. We have Spirit Walker's Grace, which allows you to cast while moving. So you definitely want to use this during phases of a fight where you have to move and there's a lot of damage going out while you're moving. And we also have Ascendance, which is for 15 seconds, all healing that you do is duplicated and distributed evenly among nearby allies. So it's definitely for use during a high damage phase. And then, of course, Shamans have Heroism. You want to use this on your raid leader's command. It makes people pew pew a lot faster. Everyone loves a good heroism phase. And then some of the utility that you have as well. For instance, Purge. So when a boss puts a buff on themselves, you have Purge. Even though you're healing, use it. Because it normally means that it's less healing that you're going to have to do overall. And Wind Shear. It is the Interrupt. With Triage Healing, you don't have to make sure that everyone's topped off at full all the time. So you can actually take a second, make sure to get that interrupt, and then go back to healing, and everyone should still be alive. And then some of the other utility things that you have, Capacitor Totem is a good one. What it does is it stuns after 5 seconds all enemies within 8 yards of it. The Grounding Totem, which will redirect one harmful spell cast by cast on a nearby party member to the totem. Earthbind Totem, which will summon a totem at your feet, which will snare enemies. And then Tremor Totem, which can remove fear, charm, and sheep effects from party members and raid members. Now, the problem with Tremor Totem is that it was recently changed with Warlords of Draenor so that you cannot cast it while you are affected by fears, charms, or sleep effects. Sorry, not sheep, sleep. So you have to know when that ability is coming up, and you need to drop it beforehand. And because it only lasts for 10 seconds, you really have to be on top of that. So not as useful as what it was, but still a very useful tool. And then, of course, we have Searing Totem. So if you can afford the general cooldown, you can always drop a Searing Totem, throw a Flame Shock on the boss, and get a little bit of extra DPS throughout the fight. And that's the basic rundown of the different abilities as far as Resto goes. While you are in Resto, if you come into a point during a fight where there's no healing that has to be done, if you do need the DPS, there is actually a rotation for DPSing while you're in Resto spec. You would throw down your Searing Totem, Flame Shot, and then cast your Lava Burst. Use Lightning Bolt as a filler, and then when your shocks are off cooldown, if Flame Shock doesn't need to be refreshed, you can use Frost Shock. And by doing that, you'll do roughly about half the DPS of what an actual true DPS would be. So it is something that you can do, and if you aren't healing at that given moment and don't need to be healing, I do encourage it, because a little bit of extra DPS can sometimes mean the difference between a dead boss and a wipe. The next thing that I'll go over are talents and glyphs. For glyphs, there's really only 2 major ones that I recommend. One of them is Riptide. So the Glyph of Riptide, it will remove the cooldown from Riptide, but it reduces the initial healing by 75%. Now, the reason why I find that this is the most useful is because with how much haste you can stack, you can cast Riptide and then cast 2 healing waves, and Riptide's still on cooldown, and now you have no tidal waves. So keeping up those tidal waves at all time is a bigger increase to your healing by being able to cast Healing Wave quicker than the initial heal with Riptide that you're losing. And then the Glyph of Chaining allows your chain heal to bounce twice as far. So on fights where you're really, really spread out, you need to heal multiple people at once, it is invaluable. And then as far as your third major glyph, it's really going to be up to you. Everything else is pretty much just utility. I personally use Glyph of Healing Wave in a raid, because then 10% of whatever you're healing on somebody else with Healing Wave heals you as well. And then as far as minor glyphs, it's pretty much all cosmetic. And then as far as the talents go, for your first tier of talents, the go-to talent is Nature's Guardian, because then whenever an attack brings you below 30%, it'll increase your maximum health by 25% for 10 seconds and reduce your threat towards the attacker. And it can do that once every 30 seconds. And it's passive. You don't have to hit anything. It's there when you need it. Whereas with Stone Bulwark or Astral Shift, they're both on cooldowns, and you actually have to hit the button in order to use it. Ultimately, it comes down to personal preference, and certain fights may deem that different totems or abilities are required. So play around with it, see what you like. For the second tier, Frozen Power is pretty much, you're not really going to be using it because you're not going to cast Frost Shock a lot. What it does is it roots the target in ice for 5 seconds. But the two that you're mainly going to use is Earth Grab, which will root somebody in place, or Windwalk Totem, which will grant raid members immunity to movement and parrying effects. So whatever the fight would call for is what totem you're going to want to use. The great thing about the way that the talent system works now is you can swap between talents that are needed during the fight. For the level 45 talents, Totemic Persistence is a big one, because it allows you to summon a second totem of the same element, and it no longer causes the first totem to be destroyed, unless it's a fire totem. So what's great about this is if you have your Earth Elemental Totem down, you can throw down your Tremor Totem, and it won't get rid of the Earth Elemental Totem. Or if you throw down your Healing Stream Totem, you can throw down your Healing Tide Totem to get that extra burst of damage. Totemic Projection, it's not really useful as a healer, unless you want to use it to put your Spirit Link Totem somewhere other than where you are. For the 60 talent, Ancestral Swiftness is pretty much the way to go, because it increases your haste by 5% all the time, and when it's activated, your next nature spell with a base casting time is less than 10 seconds. So you can use that for an instant cast heal right when you need it. For level 75, pretty much hands down, it's still rushing streams, because then your Healing Stream Totem will heal 2 targets at once, and it's a 15% additional healing. For the level 90 talent, you can use Elemental Blast, because it will increase your spirit by 1,000 for 8 seconds, but it means that you have to attack the boss, but it'll also give you a crit, haste, mastery, or multi-strike buff, so you can do that. I personally use Primal Elementalist, because it turns both of your elementals into a passive buff machine. Because when it throws down your Empowered Elemental, and then you use Empower, it increases the healing that you do by 10% for a full minute. And with the Earth Elemental, it also reduces the damage that you take for that minute. So it's pretty much invaluable, and you can get a really good, high damage phase. You can get through it really well. Whereas with the Elemental Blast, you don't know what buff it's going to give you, but you know that you'll get Spirit. So if you have a lot of mana issues that in a fight, Elemental Blast may be good. And then for the level 100 talents, after experimenting, the Cloudburst Totem seems to be the way to go, just because it's on the opposite end of the Healing Stream Totem, and it just synergizes really well. And what that does is it just collects all the healing that you do for the 15 seconds, 20% of all the healing done while it's active, and then it splits all that healing over to everybody. So it's really nice, except if it expires or gets destroyed when everybody's already topped off, then it's just overhealing. But the other option that you have as well is High Tide. It'll allow your Chain Heal to bounce to 2 additional targets affected by your Riptide, and it no longer diminishes in power with each bounce. So depending on what your preference is, or what the fight calls for, play around with it, see what's going to work out best for you and your raid composition. I don't recommend Storm Elemental Totem, because the healing that it does is in a very limited range, and it's not a ton of healing. And, you could use it for another Empower, but you'll just get more healing out of Cloudburst or High Tide. And that's the talents and glyphs. Then we'll move on to the fun stat priority. So right now there's 2 different ways that I've seen people gearing out their Resto Shamans. And after the raids have been out, it seems to be that the winner is actually back to being a mastery build. Because what our mastery does is, the more injured that somebody is, the stronger our heals get. And the way that healing was designed for this expansion was to be triage healing. And what that means is that you're not really expected to keep your entire party at full life for the duration of the fight. What it is you try and keep your tanks topped off as much as you can, and you make sure that everybody is kept up, but no one's going to die in one hit if they're at 50% health. So it's not a game of whack-a-mole anymore. It's, all right, how am I smart about this? Who do I prioritize my healing to keep everyone alive? Which is why our mastery is so good in this expansion. And then the next stat that we want to stack is haste. It lowers your cast time and it lowers your global cooldown. The goal is to eventually get your global cooldown down to the 1 second cap, so that when you cast an instant cast heal, you can immediately start casting another heal again. And then after haste, you want to stack crit, because when you stack crit, it can increase the heal size and you can get mana back. Now, I've seen some people who will stack crit over haste, and I've seen people who will stack crit over mastery. At this current point in the expansion, I don't think crit is the best thing to be stacking, but later on in the expansion, once we can start getting enough crit where we can eliminate all spirit out of our gear, that's when I would say that crit is going to be the better stat to be stacking, because then on our rings, trinkets, back pieces, all of the pieces that we're currently using to get spirit, we can actually use that for another stat, which overall increases healing. Then after crit is multi-strike. Multi-strike, it looks really good, and you can get a lot of really quick healing out, and you can really do a lot with it, but it's unpredictable. And if it goes off when your heal would normally bring somebody up to full, then it's overhealing. If you're relying on it and it doesn't go off and that person dies, it's not such a good thing. So I personally don't like it. I haven't had much luck with it, but it's not a terrible stat, but I would definitely stack other things over it. And then versatility is, of course, the stat that will increase overall damage and healing and reduce damage taken. It's an okay stat to have if it's there, but it's not the most ideal stat, just because you can get more out of the other stats, more utility than just a flat increase. And then, of course, you want to stack intellect. And then as far as spirit goes, it's only found on rings, necks, trinkets, and cloaks now, and this is going to allow you to get your mana back during the fight. The better your mana regen, the more big heals you can cast. Now, this is something that there's really no set, you need to have this much spirit before you go and do this fight. It's all going to be dependent on your raid composition. It's also going to be dependent on the other healers that you have with you. So it's really something that you just kind of want to play around with it, figure out what works for you. If you always see yourself ending the fight at close to full mana, you're going to want to reduce how much spirit you have, because you have too much. If you're ending a fight between 25 and 50%, that's a pretty good window to be ending a fight at. If you're ending constantly almost out of mana, or you run out of mana a lot, you want to stack more spirit. It's just something that you're going to want to play with, experiment with, figure out what works for you. And as everyone learns fights, they always learn how to avoid damage better. So overall, it's less that you have to heal and less of the big heals you have to use. So you'll be able to drop spirit as well. And then as far as gems and enchants go, if you're stacking mastery, every single gem you want in your sockets is going to be mastery. Every single enchant is going to be the mastery enchant. Now, for healers, you have two different options for a weapon enchant. So you can get your mastery enchant, or you can use Mark of the Shadow Moon for spirit. It all just depends if you want more mastery or if you need the spirit at the time. So again, that's something that you have to play around with, figure out what works for you. Otherwise, another thing as well is you can also do all crit gems and crit enchants if you want to increase that critical strike chance to take advantage of resurgence. So those are like the main overview topics I wanted to go over. Now, I do want to share some of the different macros that I have as well, which help with the overall management of your skills. As far as my healing surge goes, what I have is I've got macroed to cast Ancestral Swiftness and then cast Healing Surge. So the first time I need to cast Healing Surge on somebody, it's going to be an instant cast as long as that Ancestral Swiftness is off cooldown. And then for my Healing Wave, I actually have it set to cast Reinforce from the Earth Elemental or Empower from the Fire Elemental and then cast Healing Wave. So that way when you throw down your Empowered Elemental, you just cast Healing Wave, and it automatically will give you the empowered buff to turn it on, so you don't have to click the empowered and then click the heal, because there's no global cooldown on it. And then for my healing stream totem, I actually have a cast sequence macro. So it casts healing stream totem, and then it'll cast cloudburst totem. It just alternates between the two of them, and you'll always know which one's next, because if you do pound show tooltip slash cast sequence healing stream totem, cloudburst totem, no spaces in between the two, so it'll show whatever totem is coming up next. So you always know that you're on the right rotation. For Ascendants, I always macro my on-use items to my Ascendants. So if you have an on-use trinket, that gives you mastery. If you macro it into your Ascendants, as soon as you pop Ascendants, you also get your on-use trinkets, so you can burst heal through that. Because normally you're popping Ascendants when stuff is really starting to go down. You need a lot of burst healing. So that's where I put my on-use trinkets. Then of course I put all my on-use trinkets off of Ascendants as well, if I don't quite need Ascendants. And then of course the stop cast wind shear macro is always a popular one. And those are the main macros that I tend to use. You can do a cast sequence macro as well for your empowered elementals, but I tend to pick and choose which one I want to cast depending on the situation. If I just need to boost my healing, but I'm not taking a lot of damage, I'll choose the fire elemental first. Whereas if I'm taking damage as well, I will throw it on the earth elemental. And if people would like a copy of all of the macros that I have, because I also have them set up where it doesn't give you the error, you can't cast that yet, or anything like that, you can also send me an email to asimishaman@gmail.com, and I can get you a copy of all of my macros. And some of the add-ons that I use as well, obviously LVUI, I like it because it's a very clean UI, and it gives you a nice raid frames where everyone's right there, and you can see everything. If you have a debuff, they'll change colors. If you can dispel it, it'll also show you durations. It give you different boxes for the durations for your hots, also for Earth Shield. As far as like an actual dedicated healing add-on, I actually personally don't use any. I have a Razer Naga mouse, so I don't really feel the need to use a specific healing one. Like Healbot, I don't even know what's popular anymore. So those are the main things about Resto Shaman. It's a really good class. It's got a lot of utility. Okay, well again, if people would like a copy of my macros, or even, oh, I'm sorry, I've got one other add-on that I use. I use weak auras. That's how I keep track of the duration of my elementals, all my totems, making sure that I have tidal waves up. I just have it set up so it uses the actual icon for the thing with duration countdowns. So if you use weak auras as well, I can also get you all of my weak auras information. So the easiest way to do it would be to send me an email to Asimi Shaman, ASIMISHAMAN, @gmail.com, and I will copy and paste all the information and get it sent out to you within a day or two. And also, people can find me on Twitter at Asimi_Shaman. I'm always willing to answer any questions regarding Resto Shaman, or if you have tried something a little bit different than what I've explained, let me know. I want to hear about it. I want to test it myself. Thank you for listening to this special episode of Casual to Raider, and watch for new episodes in January 2015.